All right. I believe you're able to see the PowerPoint right now.
No.
Are you sure? You can't see the PowerPoint?
It's blank. No, I can't. It's just dark.
How about others?
Okay.
No, it's
I'm
there.
able to see now.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. So thank you for your patience. Okay. I was talking about what we are going to look at today. So we are going to start.
Some of us can see the PowerPoint.
Try to refresh. How many people are unable to see the PowerPoint? Hello? Can you get me?
Yes, I can.
How many are unable to see the PowerPoint? Are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right. So for those who
Yes.
access the PowerPoint, what you can do, just try to log out and then log in. I'm sure it has to do with network issues or something like that. All right. So I was talking about what we're supposed to cover today. Yeah. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a recap on what you learned about yesterday. Then I'm going to develop or pick up from there what you did with Dr. Tapanji. So now, like I was saying, we're going to look at the basic structure of the human eye, and like the course outline said, we'll go a bit in detail than what you did yesterday. I hope time will allow us. So the eye has walls and layers that are fluid, muscle, lenses inside, okay? So these things are found on the human eye. The three layers include an outer protective layer that is found on the eye, okay? So the posterior part is the sclera, and the interior part is the transparent cornea, okay? So you'll be able to see this image. I'm sure the person who's teaching you yesterday was able to show you how these things look like. So inside it is a highly vascularized layer within the posterior part being the choroid part, and the middle, a thickened known as the ciliary body. So now what you're just trying to talk about right now. So when you talk about the choroid, they're saying it's vascularized, meaning it has got a lot of blood vessels, okay? But not only that aspect of it being vascularized, but it can also have the aspect of trying to absorb ultraviolet rays in the human eye, or extra light. That's one of the functions of the choroid, because it also contains what we call melanin, which we'll talk about as we go down in the discussion. So it extends anteriorly, making a diaphragm, an iris. It has ligaments that hold a lens posterior to the iris, okay? Yeah, so those ligaments that are able to surround the iris, we'll be able to see in the next few images. So the inner layer is the sensory layer known as the retina. So the retina, as they're trying to talk about, we'll spend most of the time trying to know or talk about the retina, because in physiology, the retina has got a lot of steps in terms of how we can be able to perceive, or how an image can be acquired by changing light energy into what we call chemical, then into electrical energy. Because when you talk about the energy that you receive, or the energy that you're receiving by seeing this PowerPoint is light energy, okay? So that energy needs to be converted, or it has to be transferred in a different form. So there has to be light, chemical, then into electrical, okay? So remember, back then you did talk about synapses, etc. So all that stuff is going to come back, because you are going to have all those concepts being talked about. No wonder this topic known as neurophysiology or special sciences, these are topics that you learn at the end of the coursework in physiology. The reason being, we want you to have first the foundation or the background information to be able to understand and articulate what we are talking about or what we are learning. So you'll be able to see why the retina is capable of capturing light energy, then converting it into chemical, then later on into electrical energy, which can be sent now to the brain, and an image can be now interpreted, etc. So now, it consists of a dark pigment layer that extends to the ciliary body, and a neural layer. The neural layer has rods and what we also call cones, okay? So there are two types of cells that are found in the retina. So these cells are sensitive to light, either dull light or bright light, okay? So as you know that the cones are the ones which are responsible to bright light, while the rods are responsible for capturing light with low intensity or dim light. So we'll be able to articulate and understand how these cells can work together to produce images in the brain. That's what you're going to look at as we go on. Allow me to go to the next slide, okay? So now what you are seeing on this PowerPoint is, on this slide, is the human eye, okay? Trying to talk about the components that we are reading about in the previous slide. So if you can see, we have got what we call the fibrous tunic, which Dr. Tapanji talked about, which has got the sclera and cornea, okay? This is known as the fibrous tunic. And mostly when you talk about anything that has to do with fibrous tunic or fibrous and anything like that, whether it has to do with the kidneys or other visceral organs, the fibrous tunic mostly has to do with protection of the inner delicate layers or parts. That's what fibrous tunic has to offer in terms of the human eye. So we have the sclera and the cornea, okay? Then we have also what we call the vesicular tunic. Remember, we talked about that the choroid is part of the vesicular tunic, okay? So apart from the choroid, we have what we call the iris, and we also have got what we call the ciliary body. If you remember in the text, it was saying this is able, the choroid is able to extend up to the ciliary body, okay? Which is found around the iris. Then we also have got what we call the retina, okay? So when you see this structure, mostly it has to be colored. They like putting it like that so it can be different from other layers, or in order for you to identify how they look like, okay? So now, these are just visual aids to help you understand. Don't go and operate. Maybe, for instance, you become an optician or something like, then you see that the difference of the retina is different from what you are saying. That these are just visual aids to assist you in terms of identifying different structures when you are learning about these structures. So now, the retina, like I said, is the area where sensitivity to light is done, or that's the one that is responsible for capturing different layers of light coming, different layers of light coming from different angles or areas. That's where interpretation, that's where capturing takes place, and then transforming the light energy into chemical, then into what we call electrical, then it can be now sent via what we call the optic nerves, and the optic nerves goes to the brain. So now, so if you want, you can go through this. It say in front of the lens is the pigmented and opaque iris, the colored portion of the eye. The iris contains circular muscle fibers that constrict and radial fibers that dilate the pupil, okay? We'll talk about that later in detail as we go on. We talk about accommodation and other things. So now, internal structure of the eye. I believe you did look at this. Should we go through it? Or maybe we can just skip it since you already learned about it. Hello, are you able to get me? Or I've dropped off?
Yes, we can get you. You
Yeah.
can just go through it a bit.
All right. So for those like Amina, those that never attended yesterday's lecture, so we are going to do an overview of this. Let's talk about it. So now the internal structure of the eye, okay? So now we are going to start with the front part. So as you can see, these are what we call eyelashes, okay? Yeah. As you know, they're able to prevent dust and foreign particles from entering your eye. So no wonder most you blink when something is coming, and these are able to trap all those foreign particles, okay? Then, as you know, these are eyelids, okay? But our major focus is what is found inside. So now, when you see this structure here, this is known as the cornea, okay? And you said the cornea and the sclera are part of what we call the fibrous tunic. The cornea and the sclera. What's the function is to protect the inner delicate layers of the eye, okay? That's the function of the cornea and sclera, okay? But not only that, when it comes to the cornea also has got a function which is known as it's able to refract. And when you talk about refraction, I basically mean bending. So when light is coming through, it's supposed to be bent in a certain angle. So no wonder you find that those people who wear glasses, which we'll talk about later when we talk about the pathophysiology of the human eye, you're going to understand that the cornea is also responsible for minor refractive ability of the rays of, the rays of light that are passing through the eye. So as they're coming through, you're going to find that it's able to bend them a bit, okay? This is the first part of the eye, which is able to refract as light is passing through it. This is the first part known as the cornea, okay? I believe you know that. Then after that, you are going to find that since we've talked about the cornea and the sclera, which is part of the fibrous tunic, okay? We also have got another part, which is known as the aqueous chamber, which contains the aqueous humor, okay? So the aqueous humor is found in the aqueous chamber. As you can see, there's a fluid which is found there, okay? And that fluid also is responsible also for the same bending of light, okay? So light can be bent at the cornea as it's passing through the fluid, okay? Then you can see these structures, which are an extension of what we call the choroid, okay? These are extension of the choroid, which is known as the iris, as you can see. So if you can see these structures which are going, the choroid, if you haven't noticed what the choroid is, it's this, the thing which is looking a bit bluish, okay? Like I said, it contains what we call melanin. And as you know, melanin is responsible for the quenching effect of light, especially the UV rays, okay? So in order for you to protect you from the UV light, the melanin is able to absorb, okay? So that it does not cause any harmful effect to the human eye, okay? So this extension is also goes up to what we call the iris. Then there's also what we call the ciliary bodies, which we'll talk about later, which also attach to what we call ligaments. So as you can see, there are ligaments on this side and the other side, which are known as suspensory ligaments. Then there is the lens, which is found at the center, okay? So the lens is also responsible for the fine on the major adjustment of bending or refracting light, okay? In order for us to achieve normal accommodation, the lens has to bend or refract in a certain way that the image has to be focused on what we call the fovea centralis, okay? Because on the fovea centralis, as you remember when you were in high school, you learned about the fovea centralis, that this is where we have got a lot of cone cells, and cone cells are responsible for capturing bright light, okay? Yeah, so all the parts of the eye work together to achieve what we call vision, okay? Or in order for you to have the right accommodation, or in order for you to focus the light rays on the fovea centralis. And then away from the fovea centralis, we are going to have you're going to have plenty of rod cells scattered around these, what we call the retina. So, but doesn't mean that in the other areas there are no cones. There are cones there, but they are very few as compared to the rod cells. We'll learn about this later on. So I just want you to get hold of first the anatomy, because this is where the principle of understanding whatever we are going to learn about in the next few topics, because you need to understand first the anatomy, so that as you are discussing, because you won't be going back and forth to the same image, so you need to first appreciate the anatomy of this diagram, okay? So again, the other things that I left out, we have got the conjunctiva there, and this fluid-like substance you are seeing here is known as the vitreous humor, okay? Yeah. So this vitreous humor has got also another function that we learn about. It's also able to keep the eyeball in shape. So when someone is injured or someone damages your eye by maybe with a needle or anything, this is the part which loses a lot of fluid, hence you lose the ability to see, okay? So this is able to keep the eyeball in shape and allow for vision to take place, or for light to be able to reach the fovea centralis. But remember, like I said, that many areas that are also responsible from refracting the light as it's coming, okay? So like I said, the cornea can do part of it. the lens can do most of the work, okay? Then also the vitreous humor can also a bit of some work. For example, when you put something, a coin in water, do you see it, or anything, any object in water, do you see it in a normal way, or you're able to see a distorted image? When you are viewing something, you get a basin of water or a dish containing water, then you put a coin or anything, any object that you're able to see. Does it appear the way it can appear when you put it just on the surface where there's no water, or there's some sort of distortion in terms of trying to interpret the image?
There's distortion.
Yeah, so do you know what that means? It's the same thing with the human eye. So meaning, in some way, the vitreous humor and the aqueous humor is able also to refract. Refraction simply means bending, okay? So the light rays can be able to bend when they pass through a medium such as the aqueous humor and also the vitreous humor. But the lens is responsible for the fine adjustment or the most adjustment. So this is the one that brings about a lot of complications. You'd find that some of you guys put on spectacles or glasses. It's because there are some issues with the lens. Also, there are some issues with the size of the eyeball, the distance from here to there, etc., etc. We'll talk about those pathological conditions such as short-sightedness, long-sightedness, all those things we'll talk about then, okay? Glaucoma, and others. We'll learn about them bit by bit. Any questions? Oh, I think I forgot one or two things. We also need to know about the optic nerve, and these are where the optic nerves are leaving the eye. It's known as the blind spot. So what do you mean by the blind spot? Meaning if light falls on this area, meaning there's no image that's going to be interpreted by the brain, okay? Why? Because at this area, we only have nerves leaving the eye going to the brain. Henceforth, we don't have cones or rod cells which can be able to interpret the image. Okay, because remember, the cones and the rod cells are able to help us convert light energy into chemical, then into electrical energy. As you know, the neurons only carry what we call electrical energy. I believe my physiology is correct, right? What type of energy do it's like? I mean, it's electricity, right? So meaning, if an image falls here, because you don't have a mediator or something that can be able to integrate or something that can be able to interpret or change. It's the same thing, like for instance, if one of you goes maybe to a country where they speak French, and for you maybe you know Nyanja, Bemba, Tonga, okay? There has to be a mediator, there has to be an interpreter, someone who can be able to get what the other person is saying, then pass on the information to the person who is not getting anything, and vice versa. Okay, so that's what the rods do. Okay, they are able to interpret the information and pass it on so that the brain can make sense out of it. Any questions? Hello? Any questions, people?
No questions, go on, please.
All right, thank you. So now when we talk about the fluid fluid components, okay? So now the retina is followed by a jelly-like fluid known as the vitreous humor. And basically what is here, I already talked about it. We'll just be able to add on one or two things. Yeah, which is better. So now the retina is followed by a jelly-like fluid known as the vitreous humor, okay? I believe you're able to, if you are lost, what they're trying to talk about is this. This is the vitreous humor and this is the retina, okay? Remember, the retina contains two major types of cells, which are responsible for, and I'm not saying those are the only cells, that they contain two major, meaning there are other cells, but basically we focus on the rods and the cones, which are responsible for detecting light energy. But the other cells which facilitate or help the communication to happen. So the vitreous humor is adjacent to what we call the retina. So now, it goes up to the ciliary area and is made up of elongated proteins and is not freely flowing, okay? So which fluid does not flow? It's known as the vitreous humor. Please pay attention because most of these questions, they come in multiple choice, okay? There's one fluid which will be flowing and the other one is static. It doesn't move, doesn't make, there are two. So the one between the two, we have got two fluids that are found in the eye. There's a vitreous humor and aqueous humor, right? So if this one does not move, the other one is able to flow. Are you getting that, people? Anterior to the lens of the eye is the aqueous humor, which is freely flowing. And this flowing ability of the aqueous humor has got also a disadvantage when someone has got a condition, okay? And that condition is called glaucoma, okay? I don't know if you've ever had a condition known as glaucoma before. Have you ever come across such? Okay, let me give you just an example. Have you ever seen people who have got the eye, it has got more like a clouded appearance on the front part you call the pupa or whatever, something like that, but that's a cornea. Have you ever seen more like, there is like more like milkish substance on the front part? Hello? Have I dropped off?
Yes, sir. Couldn't get you at some point, but now we can.
Oh,
So
okay.
we didn't get some of the things you were saying before.
Oh, too bad, too bad, too bad. I've dropped off even up to now. The problem is that if the network is so bad, it means that we are going to lose a lot. And that's what I don't want, because this is the most important part for you to understand. Because once you appreciate what the anatomy of the eye is all about, it will be easier for you to now join the components. So you can kindly tell me where I did drop off so that I can be able to go back and be able to point out one or two things.
So your network is